What if I told you that one of the smallest countries on Earth is quietly becoming one of the most powerful economies in the entire world right now? Welcome. If you have been watching the news lately, you might have noticed that Singapore keeps popping up everywhere. Tech giants are pouring money into it. Billionaires are moving there. Governments around the world are studying its every move. And in the first quarter of 2026, this tiny city-state grew its economy by 4.6% year-on-year, in the middle of one of the most uncertain global climates in recent memory. That is not luck. That is not a coincidence. That is the result of decades of incredibly smart decisions finally coming together at exactly the right moment in history. But here is what makes this story so fascinating. Singapore is about the size of a small city. It has no natural resources to speak of. It has no oil, no vast farmlands, no enormous population to drive mass consumption. What it does have is something far more powerful: vision, discipline, and an almost obsessive commitment to being the best at whatever the world needs most. In this video, we are going to break down exactly 10 reasons why Singapore is rising so fast in 2026. By the end of this, you will see the world a little differently. Let us get into it. Point 1. The AI investment flood. Let us start with the single biggest story driving Singapore right now. Artificial intelligence is reshaping the global economy, and Singapore has positioned itself right at the center of that storm. Think about what has happened just in the past year or so. Microsoft announced a $5.5 billion investment in Singapore to build out AI and cloud infrastructure, and that investment runs all the way through 2029. That is not a small bet. That is one of the largest tech investments in Singapore's history. And Microsoft is not alone. Amazon Web Services committed an additional $12 billion to the region between 2024 and 2028. Alibaba Cloud opened its first AI Global Competency Center in Singapore. Bain & Company launched a new AI innovation hub there too, with the goal of helping companies scale from small experiments to full enterprise AI transformation. Now here is the part that should really make your jaw drop. Singapore currently ranks second in the entire world for AI adoption. According to the Microsoft Research AI Economy Institute, generative AI use has reached 62.8% of the population as of the first quarter of 2026. More than 6 out of every 10 people in Singapore are already using generative AI in their daily lives. That is extraordinary. Most developed countries are nowhere near those numbers. What this means is that Singapore is not just attracting AI investment from outside. It is building a culture where AI is normal, where using smart tools is just part of how life works. And when you combine that culture with billions in infrastructure spending, you get a growth engine that is very hard to stop. Point 2. The data center boom. Now that we understand the AI wave, let us talk about the physical infrastructure that makes it all possible. Because AI needs somewhere to live, and that somewhere is data centers. For years, Singapore had what was called a data center moratorium. Basically, the government hit pause on new data center construction because the country was running out of power capacity and land. But at the end of 2025, that moratorium ended. The government awarded development rights to 4 entities: Equinix, Microsoft, GDS, and a joint project involving AirTrunk and ByteDance. This unlocked at least 200 megawatts of new data center capacity, with more coming in the years ahead. The government also launched a second call for applications in December 2025 to bring even more capacity online. Here is what makes this remarkable. Singapore currently has 1.4 gigawatts of data center capacity, and its vacancy rate is just 1.4%. That is the lowest vacancy rate in all of Asia Pacific. In plain terms, that means almost every single server rack in Singapore is already in use. Demand is through the roof. The market for data centers in Singapore was valued at over $4 billion in 2024 and is expected to climb to over $5.6 billion by 2030. When you are the most in-demand digital real estate on the continent, that is a serious economic engine. Companies pay premium prices to be there. And right now, everyone wants to be there. Point 3. Manufacturing that keeps evolving. You might think of Singapore as a financial city, a tech city, a clean and modern urban paradise. But manufacturing is actually one of its most powerful economic drivers, and in 2026, it is performing strongly. In the first quarter of 2026, Singapore's manufacturing sector grew by 5% year-on-year. That growth was led by electronics, transport engineering, and precision engineering. Now, electronics alone is enormous because it feeds directly into the global AI boom. Semiconductors, advanced chips, the physical components that power every AI system on Earth, these things are manufactured or refined in Singapore. The country has built decades of expertise in high-precision, high-tech manufacturing that most other countries simply cannot replicate overnight. Here is a great way to think about it. Imagine you are baking a cake. Some countries grow the wheat, others mill the flour. But Singapore? Singapore is the one who makes the specialty ingredient that makes the cake actually taste incredible. It sits at the top of the value chain. And because it keeps investing in next-generation technologies like AI-driven factories and advanced robotics, it is not going to lose that position easily. The global demand for AI-related hardware and semiconductor technologies continues to push Singapore's manufacturing sector forward, even as the rest of the world wrestles with supply chain chaos and trade tensions. Point 4. A financial hub that refuses to stand still. Singapore has been one of Asia's top financial centers for decades. But what is happening in 2026 is something different. It is not just maintaining that position. It is actively leveling up. The city-state is now in a serious race to become what some analysts are calling the world's first trusted AI financial hub. That means using artificial intelligence not just for efficiency, but for making financial decisions that are reliable, transparent, and trusted across borders. DBS Group, one of Singapore's largest banks, has published research arguing that the future of global finance will belong to financial centers that can make AI-driven decisions trusted internationally. And Singapore is moving faster than almost anyone else to get there. The financial sector benefits from something very rare, a government that is actively helpful rather than getting in the way. The Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is the country's central bank and financial regulator combined into one, has managed interest rates and monetary policy with exceptional skill. Inflation has been brought down to between 1 and 2% for 2026, which is almost perfectly controlled. For businesses, that kind of stability is like gold. When you know what your costs will look like, you can plan, invest, and grow. And when the regulatory environment is clear and fair, foreign banks and investment firms keep flocking in. The money keeps coming because Singapore keeps earning the trust. Point 5. The geopolitical safe haven. Here is something that does not always make the headlines, but is one of the most powerful forces pushing Singapore forward right now. The world is getting more complicated. Trade wars, regional conflicts, and political tensions between major powers are making businesses nervous. And when businesses get nervous, they look for the safest place to put their people, their money, and their operations. Singapore is that place. It has something almost no other country in its region can claim: genuine political neutrality. Singapore does not take sides in the US versus China rivalry. It trades with both. It welcomes investment from both. It hosts companies from both. And both sides trust it enough to keep showing up. In a world where companies are being forced to choose between American and Chinese ecosystems, Singapore offers a rare third option. You can operate there without being politically compromised. This has led to a huge wave of companies setting up regional headquarters in Singapore. When a global company wants a base in Asia that is not inside China, not in a country seen as too close to Washington, and not in a place with unpredictable rules, Singapore is the obvious answer. The construction sector grew by 9% in the first quarter of 2026, partly because so many companies are building new offices and facilities there. Physical expansion follows trust. And right now, Singapore is one of the most trusted addresses on Earth. Point 6. Education as a national superpower. Let us talk about something that Singapore has been doing quietly for generations, and that is investing in its people with an almost relentless focus on education and skills. Microsoft's recent investment announcement came with something interesting attached to it. The company said it would give every single student enrolled in a university or vocational training institution in Singapore 12 months of free access to Microsoft 365 Premium with Copilot. That is over 200,000 students getting hands-on experience with advanced AI tools as part of their everyday education. That is not just a nice gesture. It is a strategic move to make sure that Singapore's next generation of workers already knows how to use the tools that the global economy is going to run on. Singapore's education system has consistently ranked among the top in the world. But what sets it apart is not just academic results. It is the relentless focus on relevance. Schools and universities here are constantly updating what they teach to match what the economy actually needs. There are massive national programs for adult retraining, mid-career skill shifts, and lifelong learning. Dell Technologies, which has been building its presence in Singapore, launched an AI hub with the goal of training around 10,000 students and mid-career professionals in areas like AI engineering and machine learning. When a country treats education like a national infrastructure project, the returns compound over time. Singapore has been doing this for 60 years, and the results are showing up right now. Point 7. The Smart City Blueprint in Action. Singapore does not just talk about being a smart city. It actually is one, and it keeps getting smarter. The government here has invested billions over the years in building a city where technology and infrastructure work together seamlessly. Public transport is efficient, clean, and punctual. Digital government services are some of the best in the world. Citizens can do almost everything online without the endless friction and bureaucracy that plagues other countries. The country ranks consistently among the top in global indices for digital government readiness. And all of that background infrastructure makes it enormously easier to do business there. Here is a real-world example that shows how this pays off. When new AI regulations began emerging globally, Singapore did not panic or scramble. It had already been building governance frameworks for responsible AI for years. While other countries were still debating what AI rules should look like, Singapore had already published ethical principles, launched the AI Verify Foundation to promote responsible AI, and was sitting at international tables helping to shape global standards. Being ahead of the curve on regulation is not just good PR. It is a massive competitive advantage. Foreign companies choosing where to set up AI operations look at regulatory certainty as one of the top factors in their decision. Singapore gives them that certainty. That is a quiet but enormous reason why the investment keeps flowing in. Point 8. Tourism and the experience economy. Now let us shift to something a little lighter but genuinely significant. Singapore's tourism sector is bouncing back in a big way, and it is becoming an increasingly meaningful part of the country's economic story. International visitor arrivals have been climbing steadily, and in 2026, Singapore is leaning into this hard. The country hosts major international business conferences, world-class sporting events, and cultural experiences that draw visitors from across Asia and beyond. Think about events like Formula One night races, massive tech conferences, and luxury tourism experiences that use Singapore's unique blend of modernity and multicultural heritage as a backdrop. These events bring spending, publicity, and connections. But there is something deeper here too. Singapore understands what economists call the experience economy. People today, especially wealthy travelers and business visitors, are not just looking for a place to sleep and eat. They want an experience they cannot get anywhere else. Singapore delivers that through stunning architecture, world-class food that reflects its Malay, Chinese, Indian, and European influences, and a sense of safety and cleanliness that is genuinely rare in a dense urban environment. When people visit for a conference, they often come back as investors or entrepreneurs. Tourism in Singapore is not separate from business growth. It feeds it. Every visitor who is impressed by what they see is a potential future partner in Singapore's economic story. Point 9. Strategic trade networks. Here is a point that ties the whole picture together in a way that is easy to overlook. Singapore is tiny. It cannot produce much of what it needs on its own. So it has become, over decades, one of the most skilled traders and deal makers in the world. Singapore has free trade agreements with more countries than almost any other nation on Earth. It is a member of major trade blocs, a key node in global shipping routes, and one of the world's busiest ports. When you are physically located at the crossroads of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, and you have spent 60 years building relationships and trade infrastructure, you become irreplaceable in the global supply chain. In 2026, this matters more than ever. As global trade becomes more complicated, as countries throw up tariffs and restrictions, companies need a reliable, neutral place to route goods, services, and capital. Singapore fills that role brilliantly. Its port handles an extraordinary volume of container traffic. Its airport is one of the best connected in the world. And its financial plumbing, the systems, rules, and institutions that let money move efficiently and safely, is among the most sophisticated anywhere. When the world is in economic turbulence, as it certainly is right now, being the calm and reliable trading hub in the middle of the storm is an incredibly powerful position. Companies do not abandon reliable infrastructure when times get tough. They depend on it even more. Point 10. A government that plans 50 years ahead. And this brings us to what might be the most underrated reason Singapore keeps rising. It has a government that genuinely plans for the long term, not just the next election cycle. Most democracies operate on a 4- or 5-year political clock. Leaders make decisions that look good before the next election. Singapore's political culture is different. It has been governed with a focus on multi-decade outcomes, on building institutions, trust, and infrastructure that pay dividends long after any individual leader is gone. The country has massive sovereign wealth funds, with Temasek and GIC managing hundreds of billions of dollars on behalf of future generations. Those funds invest globally, generate returns, and give Singapore a financial cushion that allows it to make bold long-term bets without panicking in a downer. The handling of 2026 global uncertainty is a perfect example. When geopolitical risks emerged from the US and Middle East conflicts, Singapore did not freeze. The Monetary Authority of Singapore kept its monetary policy steady, communicated clearly with markets, and maintained the trust of international investors. That calm, competent response is not accidental. It is the result of institutions that were built carefully, staffed by talented people, and given the mandate to think long. When you trust your institutions, and the world trusts your institutions, you attract the kind of long-term capital and talent that compounds into genuine greatness. Singapore has been doing this for 60 years. And in 2026, all of that planting is bearing fruit at the same time. So there you have it. 10 reasons why Singapore is rising so fast in 2026. And here is what I want you to walk away with. This is not just a story about one small country doing well. It is a masterclass in what happens when a nation combines bold vision with disciplined execution, generation after generation. Singapore shows us that you do not need vast natural resources to build a powerful economy. You need smart people, trustworthy institutions, a willingness to keep learning, and the courage to plan for a future that you might not personally live to see. From the AI investment flood to the data center boom, from world-class education to geopolitical neutrality, from smart city innovation to decades of long-term thinking, Singapore is firing on every single cylinder at once. And the most remarkable thing? It is still getting started. The investments being made today in AI infrastructure, in talent, in trade networks, will keep paying dividends for the next 20 or 30 years. Singapore is not just rising right now. It is building a runway for a rise that has barely begun. If you found this video valuable, please hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps more people discover this content. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to know what part of Singapore's story surprised you the most. And if you want more deep dives like this into the economies, cities, and stories shaping our world, subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. We are just getting warmed up.